Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both on a windy Wednesday.
Hello. I want to apologize. There is construction near us, so it's not so much the wind, it's the construction nearby us, so sorry about that.
Well, as long as Mary Poppins doesn't blow through my backyard, we'll be hanging out and getting to all of the information in this week's journal. Jennifer, you're going to start us off because this is the edition of Summer of Fun.
Yes, the Summer of Fun edition, which is, we're here to help. I know it's really tough if you've got kids at home and, you know, the summer is approaching and they're getting excited and it's like a time bomb ticking in the back of your mind. What am I going to do with these children when school is out? And good news for you, there are a ton of camps and classes and workshops and things that you can enroll your kids into so that they are not just propped in front of a screen all summer. And some of them are, you know, indoor, outdoor, creative, real physical sports, kind of sports ball things. There's everything for every kind of kid. A couple of highlights. There's the usual, you know, there's like lots of sleepaway camps. There's one at Big Lagoon. There's all kinds of ones that focus on like, you know, hiking and biking and things like that. But there are some unusual ones. So I want to share those with you, including Fuente Nueva Charter School has a Spanish immersion summer program. That's right. I wonder if I can go do that. Is that possible? Will they take adults?
Probably.
I'll come out of this thing speaking Spanish. Be awesome. So that's a really cool one. They do lots of like weekly themes like plant magic. I don't know what that's about, but all in Spanish so that your kid can nail that second language or first language. Maker's Apron. Perhaps you recall we have talked about Maker's Apron, the creative reuse shop over in Old Town, the spiritual successor to Scrap Humboldt. They have a couple of camps where they are showing with edumakers. Your camp counselors are edumakers, leading campers through a variety of individual and group projects, and they have themes. One of them is Creature Camp, where you make creatures. Another one, I don't even want to read the description and know about it. I'm just going to let my imagination and yours wander. Robots versus Fairies Camp. I'm in. There are, of course, drama, performing arts camps. There's lots of dance programs happening. The Playhouse, the Arcata Playhouse is offering Pageant at the Playhouse, where your kids can go and get ready for that big summer pageant they have with all the big puppets and things like that. So, I mean, that's kind of cool because it's really being on the inside of one of our local events, and we must train the next generation of weird parade and festival holders. The same old people aren't going to live forever. We've got the Museum Youth Summer Camps. I kind of like this one. The Cal Poly Humboldt Museum has kids come in. You get a membership discount, and you learn about reptiles and amphibians and animal tracking and stuff like that to do with natural history. There are, like I said, plenty of things with kayaking and whatnot. And there's also the sailing camp, which I know is very popular. There's a youth and teen sailing camp where all of a sudden you come back, pick up your kid, and they can sail now. And of course, very popular skate camp. The Arcata Skate Park, it has a skate camp that is sponsored by the city. And I just spotted a typo in that listing, but but anyway, it's very cool. And you can imagine, like, there's no kid whose interests can't be somehow sparked by all these camps. There's just so many kinds, and they've got a lot of personality. It's very, very Humboldt stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that anybody that has a family that's looking to do something fun this summer will find something that interests them in this very comprehensive article of fun.
Good luck. Good luck, parents and guardians.
I can not think of a better place to spend a summer with or without children. And I'm looking forward to all the adult fun that we'll have in an article probably coming up in a few weeks, because that's always my favorite adult fun of the summer, is the start of something that happens on Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, so it begins.
And so it begins for the glory.
Yes.
Well, excellent. Well, we're going to shift over to the newsroom, and we will come back and talk about what's on the table if we have some time.
Right on.
Thad, would you like to fill us in on what's going on in the news section of this week's journal?
Yeah, pretty much all things Cal Poly Humboldt. We've just been trying to keep up with kind of the aftermath of the protests and the campus closure and the clearing of campus that happened late last month. And so I kind of put together just a roundup of kind of follow-up tidbits about mostly things surrounding the ongoing closure of campus. And so as folks will remember, the university, in the midst of a protest that was occupying Siemens Hall and the area right around it at the heart of campus, on April 27th announced a quote-unquote hard closure of campus, basically saying that anybody who did not have administrative permission and came on campus could be cited or arrested for trespassing. And then, 3 days later, a massive police presence cleared the campus of said protests, and cleanup work is underway. And yet the campus still remains under this hard closure. And so one of the things we have in this week's edition is just kind of a follow-up with the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California and the First Amendment Coalition together wrote a joint letter kind of to President Jackson at CPH, asserting that they don't believe that this closure is constitutional for a number of reasons. One, they feel like it is a blanket response absent an ongoing or an imminent threat of emergency that really limits people's right and ability to gather and protest and speak at what is a public forum, what has traditionally been a public forum, which is the UC Quad, or the main quad in the middle of campus. And then they also assert that some of the limitations the university is placing on press access to campus are also unconstitutional. And so they kind of conclude their letter saying, in the strongest possible terms, like, lift this hard closure immediately. University is yet to respond to that. And this ongoing closure then, raised the question of what was going to happen with commencement, which is scheduled for this weekend, May 10th. And the university announced that it will be holding a decentralized off-campus commencement ceremony. And so basically it's going to have, I think, like 17 different ceremonies based on major at 3 different off-campus venues. So Blue Lake Casino, the Eureka High School Gymnasium, and I think the Eureka Municipal Auditorium as well. And then we further followed up with learning that the group of Jewish leaders through Temple Bethel kind of pushed back against some of the university's messaging, and especially as some of it was parroted by our North Coast lawmakers, Jim Wood and Senator Mike McGuire. And particularly 2 characterizations. One is this characterization that the protests on campus were kind of inherently anti-Semitic. And they said that there was certainly some anti-Semitic speech in kind of limited instances, but as a whole, they were on campus. Jewish leaders were out on campus throughout and really did not picture or see the protests as a whole as being anti-Semitic. And then what I thought was kind of most interesting about the release they put out is they really, at various points in this, the university had said that it had been in consultation with local Jewish community leaders. And these folks really charged that's not been the case, and that they actually, starting in February, tried to bring some awareness to campus administrators about some issues that they saw on campus with anti-Semitic speech and some harassment of Jewish students and faculty, and felt like they really didn't get a response. And it seemed like they felt like there could have been some educational efforts made that maybe would have kind of shifted the course of these protests and how things went down. They report that since the protests and since they were cleared off campus, that they have had kind of an impactful and meaningful meeting with campus administrators, but that only came after the fact. So a lot going on Cal Poly campus still.
Absolutely. And we really appreciate the reporting and bringing awareness. Especially, I appreciate hearing the spiritual leaders, kind of weigh in on their thoughts and the fact that they were trying to be involved in the university. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's very important to know what everybody's really saying. So thank you. Mm-hmm. And did you want to go into the other article that was about Cal Poly this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So the University Senate met last night on May 7th for the first time since the campus had been cleared, and so this was. And it was also their first in-person meeting since all this had started. And so it was really the first chance that, faculty, staff, administrators had to be in the same room and to hear from, their constituencies, so members of the campus community, whether they be students or staff or faculty. And I think the most notable takeaway to me, right off the top, is that President Tom Jackson Jr. did not attend. He is a member of the University Senate, but instead sent his chief of staff, Mark Johnson, as a proxy for the meeting. He was Mark Jackson was immediately asked why the president wasn't in attendance, and said that it was due to fears for his own safety. I think he's classified them as legitimate fears for his personal safety. He did not articulate what those were, whether there had been some kind of threat or this is just a nebulous fear. But I think it was notable when there has been so much criticism of the president of not being present in meetings, whether they be with protesters or with faculty on campus, as this kind of really high stakes and high tension standoff between protesters and the university kind of continued day to day. He received a lot of criticism for just not being present and not being in the room for conversations. And then it seemed, noteworthy that the first big conversation after the fact he is also absent from. But the University Senate took some action at the meeting. It passed two resolutions, one calling on Humboldt County District Attorney Stacey Eads not to prosecute the protesters, or the student and faculty protesters arrested on campus on April 30th. And, this is, of course, a non-binding resolution, but it is the University Senate's, the university governance's chance to kind of make a public statement. And so they did that. And then the other resolution was calling for an independent third-party investigation into the protests and the decision-making around them. So that would be the protests themselves, how they started, and then also, the university response and the decisions, I think primarily the decision initially to call in police to try to clear the building, which certainly members of the Senate voiced yesterday that they feel like greatly escalated the situation and changed the direction of the protests. And then ongoing decisions to close campus and to clear the protests and whatnot. So those were the two really noteworthy action items. But then, as I said, it was kind of the first forum where all these folks were in the same room together. And so the Senate set aside a couple hours for public input. And maybe a few dozen speakers addressed the Senate, and almost all of them, well, not almost, all of them were critical of the university's handling of the protests, and folks weighed in, from a variety of different perspectives. So there were students who were sharply critical of what they saw as kind of the escalatory tactics or decisions of the university. But there was also students who called for the academic senate, or the university senate, I'm sorry, to make kind of a stronger stance and to really call for some of the things the protesters have been calling for, including, divestment from any investment activities that might profit off the ongoing Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, and calling on the university not to follow through with any academic or on-campus discipline of these students as well. You had faculty who, for the first time were kind of voicing these things in a public forum, but were really it seemed like both frustrated, but then also somewhat insulted that they hadn't been given access to campus throughout the closures. So some of them talked about, having to risk arrest or citation to go to their office to get things that they legitimately needed to finish the semester and to effectively shift their coursework online, to access materials they needed for grading, things like that, and really felt like they had somehow been characterized as criminals or instigators in this whole thing. Had other faculty members who spoke really sharply about the effect of the closure on their students, whether it be students having to pivot to doing online work and being unable to finish projects that required kind of in-class time, or students who were living in the residence halls and were impacted by the closures. One faculty member spoke of a mobility challenged student who lives in the residence halls, who was basically prevented from accessing the one bus stop that could get them off campus where they needed to go because of the way the closure was set up. So just a very, very layered criticism of the administration's action was coming from kind of speaker after speaker after speaker.
It definitely seems like the overall tenor is that no one was very happy with how everything was handled. And then you did speak on, I believe in the article, but there was the vote of no confidence, correct?
Yeah, so that there's actually two different kind of efforts to voice no confidence in President Jackson's leadership. One came from the Academic Senate itself. I keep saying the Academic Senate, I'm sorry, that's what it used to be called. They have rebranded it as the University Senate. But so the University Senate's Executive Committee voted in the midst of the occupation and while the protests were still going on, issued a vote of no confidence in Jackson. And then a group of, I think, 320 faculty and staff signed on to a letter to the chancellor's office and the governor's office calling for the termination of Jackson and Johnson as chief of staff in their roles. And in both of those actions, they point to really the handling of this situation. Both what they felt like was a lack of leadership of him being out front, kind of on the ground, as I was saying before, participating in shared governance with faculty and staff, talking to students, talking to protesters personally. They felt like all of that was very absent, and they both the faculty and staff who signed on to the letter and the University Senate's Executive Committee, or at least a majority of it, felt that the decision to call in law enforcement initially escalated the situation and made it worse rather than making it better.
Absolutely, I concur. Well, it definitely sounds like everybody is starting to at least have their voice heard in the aftermath of what we experienced, and that the community is going to be divided, but still all the wave that I'm feeling is that nobody was really happy with how it was handled, regardless of the politics.
It's nice people can find some common ground.
Right.
Yeah, and this story, of course, will continue to unfold. A couple of the takeaways from the meeting was, Representative administration said they expect probably today there will be an announcement about kind of what the rules of graduation ceremonies are going to be. The university is well, unquestionably concerned about protests disrupting ceremonies. And they want, seem like, according to the administrator, they want to kind of balance, free speech and right to protest with, a desire to have kind of orderly ceremonies and make sure that it doesn't detract from graduates' experiences. And so it sounds like there are going to be protest areas set up kind of adjacent to or on the entry points to these graduation venues or these commencement venues. But then that there's going to be pretty strict rules in not allowing graduates or attendees to do anything that would disrupt the ceremony. So that will be coming. There was also a mention that the campus may shift from a hard closure to a soft closure as soon as next week, whatever that means. I don't exactly know.
Excellent. Well, before we shift back to what's coming to the table, do you have any final thoughts on this week's reporting, Thad?
I guess the only thing I would say is that I do hope that there is an independent investigation of what happened, because I think a lot of people have a lot of really strong feelings, and there are lots and lots of unanswered questions. It's been really hard to get clear information about what happened at various points and who made what decisions and why. So I think an accounting of that would be good for the whole community.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Thad. And with that, we will turn back to some summer fun. And what are we going to be eating this summer, Jennifer?
I mean, everything. But I have been outdoors more than usual. For one reason, because rooftop sushi opened over in Old Town. And so we have a little bit of that in the paper, just talking about what the menu is, what Chef Joe Tan is doing there. We also have, I would like to point everyone to the donuts at Frankie's Bagels. I don't know if you remember, but Steve and Rebecca Bands bought the joint from Frankie himself. And I remember when we first talked, they were like, well, one thing we're going to do is more donuts. And the bagels continue to be wonderful with Frankie's recipe. I often see Frankie in there, so that's a good sign. But then also they're deep in the donuts. And when I say deep in the donuts, I mean, when's the last time you had a tamarind glaze donut? I ask you. When's the last time you had a creme brulee donut that you have to crack on top? Fantastic. But they've also got donut holes. And if you are a person who likes street fair zeppoli, when they use the pizza dough, so it's a little bit firmer. And I love a donut with table sugar on it. There's a time and place for you, powdered sugar. I will go full Scarface on, a powdered donut on another day. But when it comes to a donut hole, I like that crunchy cinnamon sugar, and they have it. For $3.50, it's like a little tiny shoebox filled with goodies. And don't be sad if they go cold, because as I note in the story, but I feel like this is an important PSA, you microwave a donut for just a few seconds and you will enjoy the love that your parents never gave you. I'm telling you. And then at last, I was also, I've been hearing people talking about going to Willow Creek for the rafting and the hiking and everything else. And I get it now. I get it. I absolutely get it, because I went and I had some chicken wings at Lily's Thai Kitchen, which everybody who has been driving on 299 has been enjoying. And they opened up a while back, and we've written about them before, but now they also have a branch in Eureka, which is K&B Dining. And Kim Pravong, who owns both places, has opened it up, same recipes, same wonderful stuff, including, my God, the eggplant, the basil eggplant. So good. It's just, when fried eggplant is just so silky inside, and it's so glossy and shiny in this way that it will never be at home when you try to cook it at home, because your wok doesn't go to 10,000 Kelvin. It's like that. It's marvelous, and just like that herbaceous, wonderful basil flavor. Same thing with a pad see ew. If you are stuck on pad thai and you cannot get off that train, baby steps toward the pad see ew. You might get stuck on that too. It's fantastic. But theirs is really lovely and just so flavorful, and I'm very excited that they are just up the street from our office. High five, Thad.
All right, Humboldt. Well, that's our guide to eating your feelings and getting some summer fun in while you do so. That wraps up our time for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now, or you can find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum, your host. Thanks for being with us and staying supportive of our North Coast community.